let's talk about what I've read so far this month. Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I'm going to talk about the books that I have read in the first half of February. So I have finished 5 books so far. When I played my February TBR game, I got 9 books on my TBR, which seems like a lot for a shorter month. I mean, yeah, I'm missing 2 to 3 days, but it's still considered a shorter month. And out of the 5 books that I read, 4 of them were on that TBR. So that's pretty good progress. However, that still leaves 5 books to read in the second half of February. I'll be honest, I'm a little concerned I might not finish. But I've also decided what I'm going to do, because I don't have a punishment set up for my game, but I think what I'm going to do to kind of punish myself is whatever books that I don't finish on my TBR, because I can't handle the thought of having them on my TBR and kind of setting them aside and starting brand new ones, like other books instead. So basically those ones are the ones that I have to read before I start any new, add any March books to my TBR. So even if at the end of February I don't have them done, then I need to finish them before I can start March's books. However, I'm also going to help myself out with that, is that when I play my March TBR game, if a prompt comes up and I can fit one of those remaining February books in it, I'm going to pick it. So that is kind of my punishment per se, I think. Now, my thoughts might change when I go to play my March TBR game, but we'll find out. But for now, let's talk about what I have read so far. So, the first book I finished this month was Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pearce. This was the book that my BFF picked for me to read, and I did a reading vlog on that while I was reading this book, and I shared my thoughts throughout that vlog. So I will link that vlog below. If you haven't seen it, you can go back and watch it. It is a historical fiction set in 1940 London, England, during the air raid in the start of World War II. We follow Emmy Lake, who takes a job that she thought was something different than what it was. Should have listened a little bit closer in the interview. And then she starts making decisions that aren't the best. She should have thought them through a little bit more. And she gets herself into trouble about that. But we are also following with her, kind of the other characters, is her best friend and roommate. They have grown up together, and the roommate kind of gives her some advice, and Emmy doesn't listen. And it causes a falling out. And so just kind of watching that develop, and can they fix their friendship, their lifelong friendship. They've been friends forever. And I was really invested in the character. I didn't like some of the choices she was making, but I was really invested in what was going to happen. And the end of the book, I loved. It kind of wrapped things up nicely, gave us a happy ever, not a happy ever after, but kind of a happy stopping point at that time. It is a first book in a 3-book series. I have not read the other books yet, but I definitely want to read the other ones, and I'm very interested about this one. So I gave it 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. There's a little bit of language in it, but not a ton. I could very easily overlook it. So that is book number 1. Then the second book I finished was an audiobook. I listened to My Lucky Life in and Out of Show Business by Dick Van Dyke. Now, I picked this one up mainly because I'd finished an audiobook and I needed to start another one, and I needed something that was available now at my library. So I went through kind of the ones that I had saved, and this one was available now. So that is why I read it when I did. My husband did listen to some of it with me as we were driving, and he said the best part about this book is listening to Dick Van Dyke talk. I could listen to him all the time. And I'm like, I totally agree. Totally agree. Dick Van Dyke narrates this book, and that was definitely the best part of the book. I know some of Dick Van Dyke's works. I didn't watch like the Dick Van Dyke Show, but I know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and I know Mary Poppins pretty well. And I love musicals, so like it was fun to get behind the scenes information about those movies when he was filming them, kind of things that happened. I really enjoyed that. And just learning more about him as a person and how he got his start and kind of things developed. There were choices that he made that I did not agree with and kind of like, maybe. But I really appreciated that he decided to focus on family-friendly TV and movies. And so, like, majority of his stuff is fairly clean, very family-focused, able to watch. And that's why I remember watching those kind of movies as a kid growing up, because that's what we were allowed to watch. And so I really enjoyed this book. Again, I gave it 4 stars because I loved the way it was told. And just it flowed very nicely with a little bit of oh yeah, that reminds me of a time when, and then it went back. But otherwise, it was very chronological through his life. And I really enjoyed that. It was easy to follow, and it's like, okay, now we're at, right? So, yeah. And as I said, the best part was listening to him narrate it. Okay. Then I picked up The Two of Us by Victoria Bylin. This is a contemporary romance. And when I introduced this in my TBR game, I said it was set in Las Vegas. I was incorrect. I was remembering wrong. It starts out in Las Vegas, but then they only spend like 3-4 days in Vegas at the very beginning, and then they go home to Colorado. And I love that setting. It is a fictional town, but I still loved it. So we are following Maya and Jake. So they don't know each other. They randomly meet in Vegas. And because of that they meet randomly. And then they find, like, the reason they're in Vegas for the same reason, but didn't know they were in Vegas for the same reason. And so they have very different thoughts about the reason that they're there and kind of disagree a little bit. And Maya has had 2 broken relationships in the past, broken engagements in the past. And so she's being very hurt by guys and kind of trying to figure out what God's plan is for her life. She has been the caretaker for her sister after her mother died. Her sister's probably about 10 years younger than her, I think. So she kind of raised her from the age of 10, like the sister was 10. And her sister is very spontaneous, spur of the moment. And Maya has always been the one, like, kind of steady, has a plan, but she also doesn't take risks. And something comes up, and Maya decides, I'm going to take the risk, thinking that this is God's plan for her, and so, like, God puts things in motions for her. And then she meets Jake. And it's kind of like, well, if God's doing this, and now he's put this guy, like, how am I supposed to choose between this and this? And I really enjoyed following these characters. Not just Jake and Maya, but also the side characters of Sam and Lucy and the family. I just really enjoyed these characters. Now, it is clean, but we are attending the wedding of somebody who is getting married because they're pregnant. Now, they've just moved up the wedding because of that, like, right? So there is talk about, like, pre-marriage sex and then we see them get married, so then it's kind of, right, we're following married life. But we don't see, like, it's talked about, but it's not, you don't see it happen, right? Like, it's behind closed doors if it happens. They're living married life. And so, but that's a side character. We're also not really following that well, that closely, I I guess I want to say. But there is talk about it, so just kind of be warned, probably not for young readers. But I was perfectly fine with it, didn't have a problem reading it. And I really enjoyed the way, like, kind of God and faith was interspersed in this and trying to figure out his plan for your life and following it and not just based on feelings. And Jake, I loved the way Jake pursued Maya and just made her feel comfortable but not force her to make a decision. It's like, I will support you no matter which way you decide. I loved that. And then so Maya makes a decision one way, and then something else happens, and it's like, oh, maybe I made the wrong decision, right? And I loved following these characters. It deals with so much, though, like consequences of decisions and dealing with past hurts, turning to God. There are lighthearted moments, fun moments, moments that made me laugh, moments that made me tear up. It had it all. I really enjoyed this book. And I have 2 quotes to share. One is, love is a choice. It's keeping promises when they're tough to keep. It's staying when you want to leave. And it's seeing the other person through the same forgiving lens through which God sees us all. And the second one is, we can adapt and move on, or live in the past. Yeah. So I gave this one 5 stars. This was my second time reading it, and I loved it just as much the second time as I did the first time. Okay, so then I picked up Fairest of Heart by Karen Witemeyer. I read this one for the February readathon that's going on this month, which is fairy tale retellings, kind of is featured around that. So I had to read one fairy tale retelling. Now, I don't read fairy tale retellings. I couldn't think of any that I had read before reading this book. But I had this one on my shelf because it was Karen Witemeyer. I love Karen Witmeyer's stories. I have loved so many of her books. But I was a little hesitant about this one because of it having the fairy tale retelling, because I don't have a connection to that. I haven't read any. And it is book 1 of a series that the rest of the series is not out yet. Book 2 does come out in March, so I'm hoping to read it soon now that I've read this one. And I loved it. I so connected with these characters and I don't know, fell in love with these characters. Yeah. So it is set in Texas in the late 1800s, 1890 I want to say. Yes, 1892. So we start out in Chicago, Illinois, but she travels to Texas. What is her name? Penelope Snow. Oh, that's funny. Huh. You'll know why in a minute. So Penelope Snow travels to Texas as kind of a lady's maid for an actress in a theater troupe. Why is that hard? And Penelope does not have her own family. She was left as a baby on the doorstep of a children's school or an orphanage, maybe something. And so she has kind of grown up without a family. And so she's always trying to kind of blend in the background and kind of make friends, right? She is this lady's maid for this actress. She's trying to help, and something happens, and the actress gets really mad at her and threatens her. And stuff happens. Through that, she meets these 7 grandfathers, or 7 old men that become kind of like a grandfather to her, who these 7 men are all living in a ranch, like on a ranch, just together. They were all farmhands at one point, or a doctor, and so they kind of formed their own family now that they're too old to work. And Penelope meets them, and they kind of take her in and really befriend her and protect her And then there is the grandson of the doctor that kind of owns the farm land, who is a Texas Ranger. He meets her, not really sure what to think of her, but then as part of his job, he ends up investigating this troop that she was working for, and kind of things start pointing towards her, and so he's torn between, is she good or is she bad? And kind of things develop from there. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to give anything away. But I absolutely love this. And as I was reading through it, I remember the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs fairy tale. And I'm like, yep, I can see that. Like, there's certain scenes that happen, it was like, oh yeah, that's taken from that. It just made me smile. I just loved it. I fell in love with these characters. I cannot wait to pick up book 2. So the quote that I wanted to share from this is, "Perhaps it was time to consider that life was about more than work. No matter how noble, life was about love. Love for God, love for family, and love meant putting the needs of another before their own." Okay, and then the book I most recently finished was Authentically, Izzy by Pepper Basham. This is book 1 of the Skymar series, and it also features a Penelope, which is why that was funny. So we are following Izzy, hence the, right? And her cousin has signed her up for this online dating site. And she starts talking to a couple guys, and we're kind of following that. This is a 400-page book. The first 250 pages are all told in emails and text messages, which normally I absolutely love. I love reading letters and seeing correspondence because I feel like you really get to know the people through the written word. However, I struggled at the beginning of this book. And that's how I know where the kind of the point of view switched, like how the style of writing switched. Because I was getting to the point, are we ever gonna have in-person interaction? Ever? 250 is where it finally starts. And then we follow in person, but then there is still emails happening as well. But I'm so glad I stuck it out, because I really, at the beginning, after the first 50 pages or so, I was like, oh, I don't know. I just didn't feel connected with the characters. There were just things that were happening, or I don't know. I just didn't connect with the characters. There was a couple issues, I think. So Izzy is corresponding with her cousin, Luke and Penelope, who are basically like siblings to her, because after Izzy's parents died when she was 12, she moved in with her aunt and uncle and the cousins. So she basically has 3 cousins that she grew up with from the age of 12. And so these are the 2 cousins that she is writing to. The thing that threw me off is she was writing to Penelope and Luke. But the thing she was writing, it was like, I wouldn't write that to my brother. But I have, every relationship's different. I just couldn't imagine when I'm writing to my sister, writing to my brother as well. Now, I don't have a sister, so I don't know. I was talking to my best friend about this, because she's already read this book, and she said, but you and your brother have a different relationship. Yes, that's true. I know that she tells things to her brother that I would never think about telling to my brother. So, yeah, the relationships are different. So that could be Izzy's relationship with Luke. So that was that always threw me off a little bit. Then there was references to Lord of the Rings, just a bunch of books and stuff that I'm not familiar with. I've never seen Lord of the Rings. I don't know. So the things like Frodo and Star Wars mentioned, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, they were very minimal, that I could easily kind of pass over and be like, okay, whatever. Like, it was just a name. Okay, I don't recognize that name, but that doesn't take me out, right? I just don't understand why she named her dog that, because that name meant nothing to me, right? But then we get to the in-person interaction. And I loved it. Loved it. Now, another great thing about this book that I just, as soon as it got brought up, I was like, oh, that's cool, is Izzy and her family live in Mount Airy, North Carolina, which we visited last September on our road trip. So then she's mentioning things like, especially with the Andy Griffith sites and stuff. I was like, I saw that. I know what she's talking about. I'm like, that was so cool to me. And then she travels to Sky Mar and sees the guy's kind of world. And I just loved it. Loved it. And it's set like, Izzy is a librarian at the opening, and then we've got a bookstore, very active in it. Yeah. So for me, this is a 3.5 that I'm going to round up to 4, because I can't forget the 250 pages that it was like, I just need to get through this and get to the in-person interaction. But I am really looking forward to reading the next books in the series. And I think I will connect with Penelope more than Izzy, because every time like she kind of corresponded and said about like, Penelope is an actress from what I understand, or working to become an actress, or in theater anyways. And she would make references to Julie Andrews and things, and I'm like, I know what she's talking about. Like, I understood her. And then Luke. I can't wait to read his story either. So I will definitely be continuing this series, because I need to know the other 2 cousins. Especially if it goes where I think it's going to go for setting-wise. I hope so. I don't know until we get there. But yes, so this is going to be a 3.5. I'm rounding up to 4. I do have a quote from Izzy. Now, this was one where it's like, oh, I totally relate to her in this aspect. Was she, in one of the emails she writes, I am horrible at small talk. I'm not unkind, I don't think, but I just don't say a lot unless I feel I have something to contribute. And even then, I have to feel extremely compelled to speak my mind. I hate small talk. Can't do it. So, yeah. Okay. So that is what I have read so far this month. So what do I have left to read from my TBR? Wow. I have these 5. Which apparently Rules of Murder, oh no, maybe not. I was going to say I thought it was upside down. I have these 4, apparently I can't count, but I do have Turn to Me on my Kindle as well. So I have 2 historicals, a romantic suspense, a contemporary romance, and the legal. So can I do it? Can I finish? I don't know. We'll find out. I will share at the beginning of March whether I finished, how much I finished. So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, and have I intrigued you about any of these books? So far, my favorite book is this one. But can one of these change it? We'll see. I want to thank you. Have a good day. Bye.